they are tearing down and burning American flags and spray painting and advocating for Hamas. I mean, it is not subtle.
It's remarkable.
It's out in the open in our nation's capital. Wow. Let's bring in RNC spokeswoman and Jewish activist Elizabeth Pipko to react to all of this. And I just want to talk about that for a moment, because those scenes were striking, and you juxtapose that with what was happening inside the House chamber with big standing ovations for the leader of Israel, our ally, someone who was trying to split the difference of applauding Netanyahu and supporting Hamas is the Democratic nominee for president. Kamala Harris was off in Indiana at a midsummer sorority meeting. That's certainly a choice, isn't it?
It definitely is. Look, I've been asked countless times why I took this job, what people need to know about Kamala Harris, what is the choice right now in November, and I think the answer to all of that was on display today. I want everyone to understand the Prime Minister of Israel was here in the United States today, and regardless of what you think about him, he is the democratically elected leader of one of our strongest allies, right? He was here today speaking to the American people, and according to Axios, nearly half of elected Democrats were not in the room. Kamala Harris was not in the room. And again, when he was speaking to the American people, he was reminding them that their victory in Israel will be our victory. He was reminding them that he is fighting a war, that the Israelis are fighting a war right now, not just for themselves, but to bring home our American hostages, which have been held by this terrorist group for nearly 9 months now. And he was applauding those that stood with the American flag against violent protesters in the last 8 or 9 months in this country. And while he was doing that, Democrats were not in the room. The vice president was not in the room. And as you mentioned, outside of the room, we saw far-left protesters burning the American flag. Today is all anyone needs to know about the state of American politics right now.
Elizabeth, she is pandering to try to win Michigan. At least that's how it seems right now. And she definitely drew a line in the sand today. It was after President Trump said that he would meet with Netanyahu later in the week that she said later in the week she would have a meeting with him too. But I'm thinking to myself, there's a handful of swing states. We also talked about some other states that are traditionally blue states that lately have been swinging or at least polling more towards the red side. You think about New York, you think about New Jersey, and you think about the Jewish populations that live there. This could ultimately backfire on her, I think. What do you think?
100%. Look, the Jewish population is just part of the equation. There are Jewish voters in Georgia and Arizona and New York and countless states that they have to think about. But what I tell people all the time is this is not a Jewish issue, right? It's not just an issue for those who are of the Jewish faith or who support Israel. It's an American issue. What we saw today was an American problem, right? The leader of Israel was there, and they weren't burning Israeli flags, as bad as that would have been. They were burning American flags.
Right.
Because if you stand for this kind of hatred, you stand against the USA. Yeah. If you sprawl on a building that Hamas is coming, it means that you want the destruction of the United States of America, as Hamas wants to do to us here in this country the same thing they did to Israel on October 7th. So the problem is not just swinging the Jewish vote into the right. The problem is that any American with any sense of decency, with any sense of love for this country, and with any of the fundamental values that I assumed before this that we all shared, is going to swing against this kind of leadership, because this leadership is not only dangerous for our ally, Israel, it's dangerous for any American.
Well, it's Western civilization that they hate, they being the far left and the Islamists. That's the Hamas brigade here. And the U.S. and Israel are exemplars of Western civilization. That's what's at stake in that conflict. Now let's talk about what's at stake in this election. I remember in 2008, the torrid love affair between the media and Barack Obama. We're seeing a new version of that. It's just lamer for Kamala Harris. Watch.
Harris made her first official campaign stop. And she did it with a delicious, and I mean delicious, dose of trolling Donald Trump and the Republicans.
She understands what her message is. She understands message discipline. And she's an extraordinary candidate on the trail.
Kamala Harris is unleashed. She's just brilliant.
I was blown away. I kind of fell in love with her. She was smart, engaging. She's funny, feisty, twinkle in your eye.
Kamala Harris has had the single best first day of any presidential candidate in history.
Yeah, it's the modern equivalent of thrill up the leg, another 2008 callback. Some of that seems a little forced, especially when you hear from actual voters in swing states like this.
I honestly need to get more information about